what I want to do is I want to tell you a little joke. This joke kind of sets up everything I'm going to talk about. Um, it's St. Peter up at the gates of heaven. He's interviewing people that are coming in, potential people. And the first guy online, he says, "Sir, how much money did you make last year? Your last year on Earth?" And the guy says, $250,000. And he said, "What did you do?" He goes, "I was a financial advisor." He goes, "Great. Go on in." He goes to the next guy. He says, "Sir, how much did you make last year?" And he says, "About $1.5 million." And he goes, "Well, what did you do?" He goes, "Well, I was assistant to a heart surgeon at a certain hospital." He goes, "Great, go on in." The next guy comes up. He's like real happy and everything. And he says, "Sir, how much money did you make last year?" He goes, $6,000. And St. Peter says, "What instrument did you play?" All right? So, yeah, you know, making a living in music is a tough thing. You gotta have a lot on the ball as far as understanding how to get work. You know, when I was a kid, I grew up in a very poor environment. I was very poor. I was born and lived several years in what's now the famous Lower East Side of Manhattan. I used to be embarrassed to talk about that because it was so poor. It was like the worst slum in history of America, in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. But I used to be embarrassed. I used to say, because I lived in Brooklyn for a lot of years too. So I'm from Brooklyn. I was born there. And then recently I found out how famous the Lower East Side of Manhattan is. So I said, yeah, I'm from the Lower East Side now. But in my time, because we were poor, we were expected to go to work. And back then, the legal age to work was 12. And most of us started working when we were 11. It's to help the family out. So I think that helped a lot. A lot of you are at a disadvantage in that, all you guys who are up and coming and want to be musicians, because you don't have to worry too much about, making money yet. But we did, so we developed this kind of thing of how do you make money? You start developing a sense for opportunities. Mr. Waxman down at the drugstore, he needed a guy to come in and deliver, pharmaceutical things to different people on the bicycle. Or I remember one of the jobs I did was a guy who owned a clothing store, Mr. Steinman or something like that. He needed somebody to come in on a weekend when they were closed and clean it up, dust the place up and all that. I mean, this guy would give me the key to the place. I was 11 years old. Who gives a key to an 11-year-old go in and clean up a place, But it was a big clothing store. So you develop this sense for opportunity. You start thinking about what can you do, who needs a job, your services and all this kind of stuff. So then when I went to junior high school, it changed my life because I was introduced to trumpet. Actually, when I was 10 years old, I saw this movie called Young Man with a Horn. If any trumpet players out here have not seen that movie, you got to see it. It's great. It's Kirk Douglas, and it's about a kid who's obsessed with the trumpet, And when I heard the sound of the trumpet, it's the sound. I wanted to play the trumpet, So I didn't actually start playing trumpet to junior high school. But by then, I had bought books and everything. I'd learned the fingerings and everything. So when I first got a trumpet, I could play a few scales and stuff like that. This is kind of interesting. I think kids today, if you compare it to like kids today that are obsessed with computer games and all this kind of stuff, and guys my age look at it, how do they do that? I try to play with my son. I can't even get the car to go straight. It's going like this, it's going crazy. But it's an obsession. It becomes an obsession at an early age. I remember when my son took music in junior high school, and I couldn't figure out why he wouldn't sit and practice like I used to. I thought that was abnormal, and none of his friends practiced. They just kind of learned the stuff, and they didn't sit there and perfect it. And it took me a while to realize that I wasn't normal. Those kids are normal. We had an obsessive compulsion thing to practice. At 12 years old, you're sitting there practicing a line over and over and over and over again until you get it perfect. So that was my thing. Music I got so absorbed with music that that's all I wanted to do. So I went to this high school. It's kind of famous now. It's a high school of performing arts. They've made movies out of it. And it was just like in the TV shows, it was like that, music, drama, and dance. And you go in there and you were obsessed. Little kids obsessed with their goals. And when I was 14, I put a band together. But this is one thing about when you're studying. I always tell my son this because the age-old question of kids saying, "Why do I gotta learn math? Why do I gotta learn this? I'm never gonna use it. Why do you?" So my answer to him was always, and other kids his age, was school. The important thing to get out of school is to learn how to learn. I don't think it's important that you remember trigonometry, especially if you're not involved. It's not important. All that stuff is not important. The idea is to learn how to learn. And then the other part of it is to find out what it is you got to learn. And that's in life itself. Knowing what it is you got, search it out, find out what you have to learn and know how to learn it. And music is especially because you can't sit there and wait for a teacher to teach it for you. You have to find out what you have to learn, And with us, we always got bands together. We put the bands together, and I put a band together, and I asked my trumpet teacher, well, what are the songs that they play at weddings and bar mitzvahs and stuff? And I bugged him until he made me a list of songs. And then I got a band together and learned them, and then started soliciting work. How do you do that? Well, I talked to my friends. They all had parents that belonged to organizations like Knights of Columbus, Jewish war veterans, Jewish American Women's Orchestra, and all these kind of stuff. That's how we got our first jobs. I remember meeting some of my friends' moms. One of the deals was teachers always used to teach you. They had a term in New York called cutting a show. You had to learn how to cut a show, which means you sight read a show, you rehearse it, and then perform it that night. Some singer brings his charts in, you read it, and then you do the show. So you had to learn how to cut a show. That was very important. It was like you start that training early, and then you go work like at the Catskill Mountains or something. Catskill Mountains is like the resort area, if you don't know. And they had hotels there that featured people like Frank Sinatra, and then on down mediocre places where sort of famous people, but not that famous, would play there. But you had to learn how to cut a show. One night you'd have a comedian, another night you'd have, some kind of mambo dancers or something like that. So I remember going to a friend's house, and when I meet their moms, imagine these like middle-aged Jewish moms with bleached blonde hair and a cigarette. And, so Harry, can you cut a show? It was like the only thing they knew, musical. That's all. Can you cut a show? So I thought that was great. So you learn all this stuff. I put a band together, started working. Next thing you know, we're working, and then I moved to California, and that kind of changed my life too, because at the time I was mainly focused on playing classical music and all this sort of thing. But I guess I told some people last night, we were talking about I was kind of schizophrenic between being a legit player and a commercial player, because I had my bar mitzvah band on weekends, and then I play all these like youth symphonies and stuff during the week. And when I was 15, and that summer I was offered a scholarship to go and play, to attend the Marlboro Music Festival. They had a summer camp there like this in a really large scale. And I was also offered a gig at the Catskills. And they said, you know what? Every couple of weeks or so, you get the backup strippers. And I went, all right, I'm going to the Catskills. But anyway, going to LA changed my life, because I really got more absorbed in the pop world than I was than the classical thing. Because in Los Angeles at the time, it was difficult to find youth orchestras and all that sort of thing. And the high school I actually graduated from, didn't have much of a music program. It was more about football and basketball and all that kind of stuff. So again, I had to search out opportunities and see. Where I could learn more, where I could play more. I always wanted to be a player. I kind of lost. I think that's another thing I should talk about is losing a student mentality, because a lot of people become they're students. They have a student mentality forever. There's a certain point where you got to start thinking of like a musician and actually live like a musician, because as musicians or artists, we're always learning. So in a sense, we're destined to be students all the time, but that doesn't mean that you should stop living like a musician and thinking like a musician. At a certain point, you see somebody that impresses you, or you hear something that impresses you, instead of saying, wow, how does he do that? I'll never be able to do that. I think the right attitude is, I can do that, and go in the practice room and work it out, and don't leave that practice room until you can do it. And that's, that whole thing of, oh, I can't do that. That's not, that doesn't really get you anywhere. It holds you back. So it also holds you back in the professional world too, because when you have the student mentality, the student attitude, in the professional world, people see that and they have a tendency to, disregard you because they see you as a student also, not as one of their colleagues. So at a certain point, you got to lose the student mentality. All right. So let's see what else I got here. I got to tell you, Jeff forced me into this. This is my first lecture, so I'm just up here talking, and I got some notes which I haven't even looked at yet. I put together a video package for you. It's for you guys, but mostly to help me, because that way I don't have to talk so much. I got together with some friends in Los Angeles to give their opinions about what they think are important for a horn player. It's not just for trumpet players, but horn players in general. A lot of these things apply to all musicians in general. When you leave college and you go out to the workplace, what do you have to be prepared for? And so I gathered up all this information from all these different people and put them into different categories. So, I'm going to play the first clip for you, and this clip is called What's Required. So these people will tell you right off the bat what you need when you get out of college and you say you go to LA or you go to Nashville, you go somewhere looking for a job. And I should say this also, that my forte has always been pop music and ethnic music, a wide range of things that I do. And it's mostly small horn section stuff. I specialize in playing with 3, 4, 5, 6 horns. And I think that it has a whole different approach. You have to approach it really differently than you would if you're playing in a big band, and definitely if you're playing in a symphony orchestra or something like that. So a lot of things you're going to hear, like if you want to become a symphonic player and do orchestra stuff, none of this stuff really well, some of it will apply, but this is really directed to the people who want to be a commercial player like me, just go around doing all kinds of gigs, whatever they pay you for, you go, So let's go for the first clip and see what they say.
The first thing is to love what you're doing. And when we came up, we didn't give a damn about money, man, or fame. We didn't know how to pronounce that.
Obviously, any instrumentalist should be prepared in terms of their own instrument, their proficiency, their execution, and they need to be able to find their own voice on a musical level. If there's a specialty that they want to focus on, or if they want to be able to specialize in all types of music, then they have to really educate themselves and develop their skills as such.
The most important attributes would be knowledge of fundamentals, just solid fundamentals of your instrument, or instruments, if you're talking about woodwind players.
Technique. That's the whole thing. Music is the only thing, even though it took me a long time to accept it. Not even long as made me accept it. But music and mathematics are absolutes. The music is the only thing that engages the left and right brain simultaneously, emotion and the intellect. And you said, what should they learn first? If you don't have that science backing up, that's not a cliche. 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. It's true. You need to have that science behind you. Herbie Hancock could not be Herbie Hancock if he doesn't have the science. He could not do it. Or Dizzy Gillespie, or you, or Arturo Sandoval, whoever it is, If you don't have that technique, and that takes practice and work, and it's a lot of perspiration. But you gotta have your chops, man, first. I don't care how much you feel, if you can't execute it, doesn't mean anything.
Good musicians are able to adapt and pick up quickly as to what's required in terms of the job that's in front of them. When we get a great horn player, usually he knows about playing in the pocket and knows how to phrase the music.
We want the section to be basically capable of doing pretty much anything that we ask, and that goes according to whatever the project is. And sometimes the challenge at hand goes from just playing pads and whole notes to very fast passages and loud and intense. Bottom line being having your arsenal prepared on whatever the task is. And of course, the number one thing is intonation and technique and talent and all that stuff. But for me, I'm looking for a serious vibe as well. Something that separates that section from any other section that you could hire. And that's what makes a great horn section.
Sometimes the perspective is the rhythm section is here, the horn section is here, and never the twain shall meet. And some horn sections want to pull it back, some horn sections want to push it, and it's critical that we all groove together.
To me, as a drummer, number one is time and feel.
To me, horns are an extension of the rhythm section. They have to be right in the pocket at all times. You've got to be able to read the notes, listen to the drummer and the bass player in the rhythm section, but basically the bass and drums, and stay, right in the pocket with them.
Your time has to be good. It's time. Because everything relates to time. There's a problem sometimes with some of the guys from the conservatory, they're playing the symphonies and stuff like that. You go and play with guys like that. And the concept of time is a completely different thing. Time is like, it's somewhere in there. When we're playing, time is right there. I gotta have the tight rhythm section that can play with the rhythm section. That's what you want.
I'm 51 now. My whole life has been, okay, let's work together. If I'm going to play figures, I want to have them with the horn. So the horn players like Harry Kim that are right there with you and have great time and great feel, it works great. But with horn players where time and feel are not up there in the top, 2 or 3 things they're doing, it can be a root canal. It can be really, really difficult.
That they know how to play, and then they play together, And also the drummer is the first trumpet player. He's part of the trumpet section, man. Those rim shots are part of the lead trumpet.
The worst I've ever been criticized in my life as a drummer was when I first got down to college. I went to North Texas State. I got in the top band, they call it the 1 o'clock lab band, and the bass player looked at me and he says, "Man, when we play in small group, just piano, bass, and drums, maybe a horn player soloing, your time is okay. But when we play in a big band, your time's horrible." And I was about 19. So why do you think it's horrible? And he said, "I'll tell you exactly why it's horrible. Because of the horn players. And when you're staring at your music and you're looking at the horn section and you're wanting to catch every single figure on the page and you play with 5 trumpets, 5 trombones, 5 saxophones, and they're all playing on the and of 2, zooms to bow, and they're going dudes to ah, and you follow them." He says, as a bass player playing quarter notes, it's frustrating, it's horrible, it makes me want to just go stop. But here you're catching the figures, you're playing the rhythms, and you're reading the chart, but it's not grooving, man.
I think that's one of the best things that can happen in the band when the horn section and the rhythm section are like one.
Pretty much all kinds of music, even, big band or Latin, reggae, funk. When you hear James Brown horn section, man, those guys are like on it like a drummer would be, you know what I mean? The riff would, it's like if a second 16th of the beat, so you gotta be in the Cuban world and the salsa world, same thing, very much like the drummer, the percussionist. You really should understand what the drums do, because a lot of those riffs, even though you're playing notes, the rhythm of the riffs you're playing have to be in clave and inside the actual rhythm that we're playing.
I want to be able to have somebody come in, be confident, but not overconfident. Don't let their ego get into the way. When you go on a job, you check your ego at the door.
For me, it goes beyond the playing. It goes directly to having somebody who immediately wants to be part of the team process. In our particular band, there's 13 musicians, and it's about each component doing his job to come up with a sound that exemplifies complete group effort. To me, it's more important that you understand the concept of team and how to be a team member and give up yourself and put your ego in your pocket to do the job that's required.
If I'm playing first, I want somebody sitting next to me who's going to follow me, who's going to, maybe they don't think it's the right way to phrase something, but they're going to say, okay, it's your ball, it's your bat, we're going to follow you, we're going to make you sound good. Just be a team player. If you're playing first or you're playing fourth. In Los Angeles, we pass parts around on movie calls, on whatever. If I'm playing first trumpet on a movie, and I have somebody like Malcolm McNabb or yourself over here or Warren Looney, and let's say a salsa thing comes up where they're going to have a salsa solo. All right, well, I could do that, but I know that I'm going to pass that to you because I know that's even more in your wheelhouse, and you're going to stand up and tear it out.
If I were to pick one thing, and I learned this from Quincy Jones a long time ago, and I read an article where he said he'd rather have less of a player, but a guy with a great attitude, than a guy that comes in that can really play, but doesn't have a good attitude and is a detriment to the session,
What kind of person are you? Are you somebody that people are going to want to be on a tour bus with for 6 months? That tour bus ends up being a submarine really quick, and one guy with an attitude can bring everybody down. This works on recording sessions. This works on gigs, even on casuals, playing at wedding ceremonies or private parties or award shows. If there's somebody in the band or in the section, it's not fun to be around. You don't have to be the court jester always telling jokes, but be positive. By the grace of God, you're making money with your instrument, whether you're making $50 or $5,000. Be happy that you're playing your instrument and someone's paying you. Wow.
So you noticed I got a lot of rhythm section players that speak because, in my world, the stuff I do, it's really important. I feel that it's really important to work with the rhythm section and to get their approval. Like a lot of times I do a show like, the Four Tops or the Temptations or Aretha Franklin or something, where they have a traveling band. They travel all over the world, all over the United States, and they pick up different horn sections every night. And man, when you see the bass player, or when I see the bass player or the drummer looking at me with a huge grin like, yeah, that means you did your gig because they're digging you, And you'd be surprised how many times in horror stories I hear about different horn sections in different countries or states or stuff where they don't know how to play together. So, I give you some handouts. A lot of the stuff that they talked about are in them, So like in proficiency, sound is important. Sound, having the right sound for the right job. Oh, by the way, Susan, are you here? Yeah, Susan. Sorry about the comment about the orchestral players and the time and all that. In our world, see, we got to be with the drummer. It's a Zen thing. Be one with the drummer, and in a lot of time, be one with the entire rhythm section. So, but going back to sound, understanding sound, being able to have a flexibility in different kinds of sounds you play. But you want your sound to project. You want your sound, especially playing pop music, to come out. I mean, there's no room for an introvert when you're playing a horn instrument. You may be an introvert. Believe it or not, I'm an introvert. I'm kind of shy. But, I've learned... Stop it. No, but I've learned that, you're out there, you got to play. You got to let them hear you. I mean, the whole Claude Gordon thing of hit it hard and wish it well, a lot of the studio musicians laughed at that, but, they didn't get it. I totally related to that. When I first heard Claude say that, that means you go out there and you give it your all, no fear, nothing. And if you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. But you can't play out of fear. You play out of total conviction and passion. And this is what people want to hear. This is what turns people's heads, So that's one thing. Sound. Intonation, of course, really important. A lot of stuff. You got a lot of unisons. In pop music, they don't have a lot of harmonies and stuff because it's just out of character a lot of times. So you have to have impeccable intonation, technique, of course, too, because like you heard Nathan E say, sometimes you just have pads, just pads, but you got to know, too, that pads means whole notes, just a bed of whole notes sometimes. But, whole notes have a life, too. And you got to understand that when you start playing whole notes, a lot of guys that just sit there and you got to use your musical instincts, because there's times when a chord is going to another chord, you give it a little bit of a lift to go into that chord, and you give it it might not be written in the music, but this is all part of interpretation, and especially in the pop world where arrangers don't always put these things in, you got to instinctively give it to people. I mean, this is how I see it. Not everybody does it, and that's part of why I get hired a lot, because I put stuff in that's not written. Some people don't want to hire me because of it. But, and reading skills. Reading is very important for obvious reasons. And one thing about reading, though, is to have a consistency in your focus. Everybody reads pretty good the first time because they're really focused. Second time, okay. Third time, they start making mistakes because they start relaxing. When you're in a studio situation, you're doing a film date, for instance, you got a 40-second cue or something like that, string section and all, and you got this stuff going on. And then 20 seconds into it, the horns come in, and somebody blows it, man. They got to do the whole cue all over again. You don't want to blow it because you lost your concentration. So focus is super important, And then they talked about time and feel, I always talk about this, that a horn player playing pop music and ethnic music, they got to become one with the rhythm section. You got to feel it. You got to understand what they're doing so that you could play rhythms with them. One of the things that I find when I hear an amateurish or when you hear a lesser horn section, one of the things, like when you have pop music, you have a backbeat, and you have horn lines. You look at that line, anything that lands on 2 and 4 better be right there with the drummer. Most of your horn players, when you go around here, it's like, it's flamming. The backbeats are flamming with the percussion and the drums and all that stuff. And then you got other components also. You got a guitar player playing another rhythm, and so you got to analyze your rhythms. I mean, I guess at first you have to analyze them. After a while, you just start to feel them. You don't have to think about it. You just start to feel them because you become part of the rhythm section. And it's great. When you're playing with the rhythm section, as I said before, the rhythm players start turning around and they start dancing, looking at you, and because you're grooving with them. And I think that's one of the things you want to do. You don't want to separate yourself from the horn section. From the rhythm section. A lot of horn players do that. I've seen it. Young horn players, they're just separated. They don't even talk to the guys in the rhythm section. You got to become a family. That's really important. So, so we got horns that become part of the rhythm section, execute all rhythms like a drummer. You got to determine how the groove is. Now, what does that mean, what the groove is? Because, even though you got something, with a metronome perfectly there, there's a thing called a feel, a pocket, where you're actually exactly on top of the beat with everything, or is it just a little bit behind? That's called the pocket. That's something you can't study. You have to know this. You have to feel it. And you can't write this, and the pocket changes depending on what kind of music you're playing. It changes depending on who the drummer is. Phil Collins has a huge pocket, man. He plays exactly in time, with a metronome, if you measure it. But it's always, you can't measure it. It's so minutely behind everything, and it gives everything a relaxed feeling. If you listen to it, it's like it's almost like a whip, but in time. How do you, it's hard to imagine that, but it is. And if you play your horn parts like that, it's great. But if you go in there and just play in time like this, it doesn't work. Then you're out of pocket. That's what they mean about pocket. Determining the pocket. All right. So, one of the things that if you ever look at YouTubes of old, especially ragtime piano players and all these old guys, there's a lot of brilliant YouTubes, and everybody had impeccable time. First, that's the first thing you notice. The time is impeccable. I mean, if you listen to today's soloists and jazz players and stuff, time is impeccable. And I think that's really important if you're going to be a jazz soloist, when you horn section, in a horn section, anything. Time. It's because time creates the groove, and the listener is taken on a trip when you're playing. And if you stumble time-wise, they stumble. Like I did last night a lot. So, All right. And then they also talked about teamwork. Teamwork is really important because a lot of young people come out of college and they got a lot to prove. They come to LA or they come on the scene and they over-advertise. I've seen a lot of trumpet players come to town throughout the years, and they introduce themselves as, hi, I'm such and such, lead trumpet player, because they played lead trumpet at North Texas or something. Well, I got news for you. You don't go to LA and say, I'm such and such lead trumpet player. You don't see those guys anymore. And before you know it, they're gone. They don't stay around too much. So being a part of a team player, you come to LA or you go to any town, you're a trumpet player. Lead, jazz, third, fourth, doesn't matter. You don't have this ego thing. That's what they're talking about, taking your ego out of the mix and being able to work as a team. You got your lead player there, you follow him. That's one of the mistakes I made for sure early on, playing different genres, because I was very familiar with different genres. And then I get on the studio scene, and I'm playing for a trumpet, and I think that these guys aren't interpreting this music right. We're playing funk, and it's not. So I think I'm going to play a lead trumpet from the fourth chair. That's a big mistake. You don't do that. You just follow the leader. This is how you stay working. People want to have people that they're comfortable with, that are not going to give off a bad vibe because of the way you're doing it. They just and they are established guys. You follow them. They want to feel comfortable. And the other part, of course, is like I said, you identify the leader. You find out who's really leading here. There's a protocol when you go do studio work in Los Angeles. There's an unannounced leader. You could hear the guy who's got the communication going, the communication lines going with the composer or the producer or something, and you let him have the show. Your turn will come. That's another thing, because I don't know amongst you young people, that alpha male thing, that alpha dog thing. I know I had it, and I had to tame that. You go in someplace you want to take over. You got to tame that, because that's really important. You guys know who you are. You people know who you are that have that instinct. So you have to just kind of back off on that. Learn to play with a team. You'll have your chance. You will have your chance. So, and then, of course, having a positive attitude. Having a positive attitude goes in all areas. You go in, you're doing a service for somebody. You're being hired to play their music. It's not your project. So you're there to serve. You want to be as positive as possible. You got to remember this. But somebody, I'll say this. To me, the golden rule is very important in all aspects of life. And in the work situation, it's super important, because you got to understand that people want a service and you're providing that service. So you want to put yourself in their shoes. What do they want? What do they want to see? What do they want to hear? And you think about arrangers. Arrangers, every time they bring an arrangement to a recording session, they're going through this anxiety because they really haven't heard it yet. Even the most seasoned of arrangers have a little bit of anxiety. So you want to make them feel comfortable when they come to a session. You don't want to be one of these snobby musicians that, I hope this chart is good, or start commenting on the chart, the arrangement right off the bat. You want to be positive. You want to help people. You got a guy next to you who's not as seasoned as you. Be kind to him. Help him, because he'll play better. So that's part of it. Be positive all the time. All right, we're going to go on to the next clip, which you'll see.
We need to be as versatile as possible and have as many different musical styles under our belts. That's the thing that keeps us working, is that deep, wide frame of reference that we can draw upon.
I like to think that musicians can prepare themselves as much as they can for all styles of music, because I think that makes it more fun to be prepared to play as much on an instrument.
In a way, music is the voice of God, and God speaks many tongues. And the versatility is key, I think, and it's been one of my most, I'd say, satisfying things to know that I feel at home with any kind of music,
I think, first of all, you have to kind of learn to listen to all these different styles of music and see what makes them work and find some enjoyment in it, because that is what you're going to have to be doing.
You have to be versatile because you're going to be asked to play different genres. For instance, on American Idol, contestants might be asked to choose a song from the year that they were born. They might come up with anything, and you might have 6 on the same show. You might have someone that chose a country song and someone that chose another style, but you have to have the conviction and the knowledge of that particular style.
We do all sorts of different kinds of music there, but the funk things require one thing and even one kind of tone. The salsa things, definitely another kind of tone, and definitely a rhythmic concept where if you're not listening to everybody else, both the rest of the horns in the section, but mainly the rhythm section, it will fall apart.
You could be from anywhere and learn a style of music. For me, to this day, the best trombone player in Latin music that ever played the music is Barry Rogers, who's an American guy who really studied the music in depth and just became one of the greatest instrumentalists on that instrument of my style of music.
Versatility is key, Herbie and I talk about this all the time because there are lots of ideologies in the business. I don't call any names. You think you should just play one thing and everything. We were like that too. We were snobs like that when we were 17. We could just play one thing. We try to make Schottische to sound like bebop, try to make Bar Mitzvah sound like bebop. It's ridiculous, Stay true, and Ray Charles kept saying, stay true to the soul of each music.
I've run across a lot of great players that can play great jazz, but they can't play in a Latin band or Latin section because they don't have any idea, they haven't studied, they haven't developed those skills.
Well, there might be a guy who's a great musician in one style. For example, to use an extreme, he might be great in the Guy Lombardo style, but it's not going to fit in a contemporary pop rock idiom in a style that's, along the lines of Tower Power, Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. His vibrato is going to be too big. He's not going to know how to play straight eighths. For our particular show, we need guys who are going to know how to play a straight eighth, know how to play right in the groove, right in the pocket, not lay it back, not rush it, know how to play the articulations, know how to read a show, know how to play in tune, know how to be very precise in what they do, and have some edge on it as well.
If that one style is in, you're going to work. But if that one style becomes passé and something else becomes really the hot thing, you're not going to work. The more you bring to the table as far as a player, meaning, we all can play. You can play your horn. You know how to do that. You know how to play high. Hopefully you know how to play in tune. Hopefully you've been in situations where you've played with other musicians, other guys, so you know how to be a team player. I think the thing that's probably most important is to know and learn as many different styles of music. That was always a big gripe of mine, that some schools turned out these trumpet players who could play double high C all day long, but not be able to play In the Mood, or String of Pearls, or a solo on something like Stardust or Tenderly. I've tried to follow it in my career, is learn as many styles as I possibly could. The more you bring to the table, the more you're going to be more valuable to the people that hire you.
Cuban music is so strong, you can't improve it. You cannot improve it, man. It's still playing the same music. It is at the top. It is. And This little kid, Alfredo Rodriguez, is living proof of that. They are no joke. I mean, they are schools. They have their technique together. They have the styles, of all the Latin styles, the African influences, and jazz influences, everything. And that's what it's about, man. There's only 12 notes. Till they come up with 13, learn what everybody did with the 12.
When they put the call out for Dance with the Stars, they wanted music. They wanted young musicians. That's what they told the contractor. And Bill Hughes, the contractor, says, I could get you some young guys, but the kind of music you're talking about playing is music, tangos, and music from the 30s, and music from the 50s, and music from the 90s, and here and this, and all different styles of music. Not a lot of young musicians know all those styles. So I'm going to have to put older guys into that situation. And when they finally realized that when they hear the band play, and we're playing all these styles and copying the styles, they realize, oh, okay, now we know what you're saying. Hence, which goes back to your other question, be versatile. Bring the most you can to the table, and you're going to work.
So versatility is important because the more you know, the more you can do. For instance, I'll do a recording session and might do Persian music, that night I might go do a wedding and play with a big band and play Glenn Miller music. The next day I might go play with a Latin band, like you heard last night, or even more commercial Latin bands, a more danceable Latin band. This is what we do, and we do it with conviction because we studied it. We know this stuff. Of course, if you want to be a jazz soloist, if you're like a serious jazz soloist, or if you're a serious classical player, of course, actually, I'm going to take that back because John Lewis. Has anybody ever heard of John Lewis? John Lewis is the classical trumpet player in the LA studios. Whenever you see movies and you hear these beautiful trumpet solos in a film, it's most of the time, now it's John Lewis. It used to be Malcolm McNabb. But John Lewis does all kinds of stuff. I remember I used to sub for him on Latin bands in the 80s, and he'll play rock and roll bands, and he'll play big bands. But yet his forte is classical music. He plays in symphonies all over the place in the West Coast. So versatility is important if you want to keep working. And I would imagine you're thinking this is a part of a career thing, a career move. So you want to open up as many doors as you can. So versatility is really important. So part of it is developing an appreciation for different kinds of music. A lot of us have our favorite kinds of music. A lot of people think, oh, I don't listen to rap music, or I don't like this kind of music or that kind of music. Well, to be versatile, you have to listen to it. And I think that the more you listen to different kinds of music, the more you start to get an appreciation for it because you absorb certain things about it. But you actually have to listen, and you could also study it. You could find out, well, what are the components of certain kind of music that make it sound like that? Like right now, the big thing in Latin music is reggaeton. What makes reggaeton reggaeton? What makes reggae reggae? What makes R&B R&B? You look at it from an intellectual standpoint. And then when you start to understand these things, and when you start to understand the complexities behind it, maybe you start to get an appreciation for it, and you become less of a snob. Because I know there's a lot of us who are snobs about certain kinds of music. But I think they're all forms of expression. They're all art. And I think as artists, we should learn to appreciate different kinds of music. And once you get an appreciation for it, you play it better because you play it more convincing. You really understand it. You play it better. And this is what people look for, So, there's a thing about sounding generic. A lot of studio musicians, this is one of my complaints about the studios, is everybody kind of plays everything, but nobody really plays it exactly how it's supposed to be. So in certain situations, like what I do with Phil Collins and specialty things like Earth, Wind, and Fire when I play, they don't want generic players. They want players that really play the stuff the way it was authentically intended to be played. So that's another thing, to be able to get hired because you're the real deal. They call you because when you play Latin music, you sound like you're playing Latin music. When you're playing funk, You sound like you're playing funk and on and on. A lot of your studio players, like I say, are generic. They sound generic. You know, you hear the great players and everything, impeccable players, but it's generic. So that's one of the things you want to kind of develop a specialty, and you want to listen because you want to be able to have a lot of different hats, man. When it's time to play this, you play it this way. When it's time to play that, you play it that way. You know, you get hired to do like a classical, I do film dates as well, where I got to try to imitate Susan Slaughter, you know. And, you know, I got to approach it a certain way. I know I have to change my mouthpiece and get a different sound and all this kind of stuff because I know that that's what it's supposed to sound like. This is what it's supposed to feel like. So the same thing in all the different genres is, you know, just because you're playing pop doesn't mean you play everything the same. You have to understand it. Versatility is important, you know. So, like Quincy said, stay true to the soul of every music. And he also talked about his teacher, Nadia Boulanger, who said there's only 12 notes. Learn what everybody does with them. Let's go on to the next part.
Practical experience is almost equal to training. The training has to be there. You got to know how to blow your horn. You have to have the range. You have to be able to read, you know, have good tone quality, and good tone quality varies. There are times when I've asked guys who have good tone quality, can you dirty it up a little bit? Because this is a James Brown tune. I don't want your best tone quality. And these are things you learn in the field. Certain things you cannot learn in a classroom.
If you're smart enough to listen to the people around you and learn, it's going to make you a much better player.
I had a kid that was in my daughter's high school band. This is a high school band that was so far above the rest of the kids that he sounded professional. So I said, well, let's see what happened. I had a date, big date. I had everything on it, strings and everything on it. It was a big date, but it was R&B tune. I said, let me throw him in there with the best of the studio guys and see how he holds up. And I told him, I said, first thing, just be there on time, warmed up, you know, and we'll see what happens. He did good. He was scared to death. And we were doing 3 tunes. It was over group 4. And I told him, I said, first of all, you got to relax. You're only here because you're really good. And I'm trying to give you one experience. Because he was going off to college after this. I said, I want to give you one experience of playing with the real pros. You will learn more in this 3-hour session than you learn with your private teacher, with anybody else. And so be here to learn. And it was great.
The music is a business. My dad once told me it's the music business. Business is a much longer word than music. So you have to know your music, but at the same time you have to treat it as if you're going to the office to go to work.
Well, usually it comes through recommendation. And if there's somebody I don't know, or somebody I've heard of, usually in my position as a band leader, you hear of other musicians through word of mouth and through reputation.
It's all word of mouth. And I don't care if it's LA or New York or Nashville or London or Paris. You know, wherever you're at in the big music town, it's about word of mouth.
When I started out playing, I would play in a band. You played at a lot of clubs, and you play at this club today, and then there was another band, and they, man, you know, we need a percussionist, and you go, oh yeah, I'm free on Wednesday night. I was actually playing in a band in a club called Virginia's, and there was a trumpet player there named Oscar Brashear. And I said, hey man, you play great. What else you playing at? I said, oh man, I'm playing at the Baked Potato tomorrow, every Tuesday night. Baked Potato was that. I went down there. It was like it was like a great club where there's a big musician hang. So, I mean, you have to, if you're starting out now, you got to find those places. They're less far and few between, but they're there. You can still find them. It's word of mouth and referrals and meeting guys and how you get along with the people and how you go along sitting in and playing one tune. It's a lot more important than sending out resumes. Word of mouth, relationship with other guys is really what does it. And, you know, work on your acts, you know, work on your trade So like when the red light goes on, or the conductor says, okay, now play, or you audition with this rhythm section, you're at your tops.
You might play first, you might play fourth. It doesn't matter. The important thing is what's on that music. And if I hear players that do that and they take care of business, and they're one of the guys, and they're glad to be there and glad to have the job, I'm gonna request them and recommend them every chance I get.
If you want to work with me, find out who I know that you know.
If you come to town and you call me and you're a young guy, I'll take you out to lunch and we'll talk. And just from me talking to you and hearing the way you talk, I'm going to know if you're a good player or not.
If you're a likable person and you're playing your behind off, you'll get work. Word of mouth, being good and being likable, being punctual. I got to say that again. Being punctual, being good, and being likable.
You know, it's unfortunate because when I was growing up, there were tons of places to play your instrument. All through high school, I mean, there were nightclubs everywhere. We could go play and sit in and be in with bands and stuff like that. I find that a lot of guys that I meet that come out of college, they haven't played a job yet. You know, so you're in a disadvantage. So, like I said earlier, you got to learn to create opportunities for yourself. But you got to get out there. You got to get out there. You got to get the practical experience. Practical experience is like Mr. Wheeler said, is just as important as training in school. You know, you got to get out there. It's amazing what you learn when you're out there playing with pros and stuff like that. One of the things you'll discover what you need to work on, for instance, once you're out there playing. You don't really find that out until you get out there, you know, because like it says, you know, you'll find out what you need to work on because you'll find new challenges. You learn from others by listening to other people. You learn about articulations. Every style of music has a different way of articulating. You know, sometimes you might have a little line that goes that's written da 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 da. Certain styles you play da 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 da. You know, or, you know, it depends on the style of music, and sometimes that's not written in, and you learn that from other guys. You know, when I was 20 years old. When I played with Harry James, I went on auditions for him. Turned out that it wasn't an audition because, you know, 3 weeks later I asked the manager, I says, do I have the gig? And I said, sure. You know, that reminded me of this guy Phip who used to play with Sammy Davis Jr. He was Sammy's lead trumpet player for 22 years, something like that. And he said he went to audition and they never told him he had the gig. 22 years later, you know, he was still there. They never told him he had the gig. So. But it's like that. It's just one of those things where you go out and you play. You know, I lost my train of thought here. But anyway, learning to network. You go out, you learn to network with people. Networking is very important because I can't tell you how many times I run into somebody and they immediately say, hey, what are you doing next Wednesday? Because people have a tendency to only remember the last person they saw. You know, people, it's funny that way. So constantly staying in contact with people and running into them is really important. Doesn't mean you become a pain in the butt, calling them every day and finding out. You don't want to do that either because that turns people off. But it's important to be outside, make yourself visible, make yourself available for people. And like I tell you, many, many, many times I'll run into somebody at a nightclub or at the musicians union and say, hey, I'm glad I saw you, man. I got a session tomorrow. You want to do it? You know, it's an amazing thing. So you got to get out. You can't stay at home. It's part of the networking thing. Let's see, what else? Meeting other musicians is very important. Again, I was talking about the mentality of student. You know, you got to get out of student mentality because people could feel that vibe. So you don't want to stay categorized as a student. You want to be one of the colleagues, you know. Like I said, we're destined to be students, but that shouldn't stop us from being full-fledged musicians, you know. It's the same way, like, you know, some people say, you know, if you know you got a destiny, well, you know, why are you going to work hard? Well, we all know we're destined to die, but that doesn't stop us from living. So you got to keep living. You got to live as a musician. We're all students, just at different levels, you know. And again, I mentioned this before, being a head turner, whenever you play, give it your all. You know, play with passion all the time, because you want to be what I call a head turner. When you're playing in a big band or something, and all, you know, you're playing trumpet, you get up to play a solo, or you play a lead chart, and the whole sax section turns around, looks at you. You know, you want that. You know, because that's what creates a buzz. You want people out there talking about, oh, have you heard that new trumpet player in town, Allison? You know, she's fantastic, man. Did you hear her solo the other night? You know, oh yeah, and Reed's real good. You want to create a buzz. You want people talking about you in a positive way, and especially that one thing about being a nice person. People look for that, and it works. It helps you get around. You want people talking about you, and sometimes they talk bad about you, but as long as they're talking about you. All right, let's move on to the next thing.
A perfect example is what you guys did this year on American Idol. And they actually took you out off the bandstand and brought you down front to be featured with the singer. Now you got to remember, there's 25 million people that watch American Idol every week. If you were to go there and just stand and play it, it's going to sound great, and you play it and you don't move and you don't do anything, what good is that?
People came to see you as well as hear you, so I have no problem with getting up there and putting on a great show. Of course, I come from the old school of the horn sections like Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Kool and the Gang, and Tower of Power. And the guys all were just having a lot of fun, which is the main thing, is having fun. And when people come see a show, you know, I mean, they're not just listening. Otherwise, they could just listen to the record. So I say get up there and hit it.
What's performance? It's showtime. I love like Cuban bands. You know, I used to, you know, you watch this old Cuban band like Los Bambán, and you know, all these bands that are down there. You know, these guys got steps and stuff like that, and they're killing it. You know, I'd much rather go see a band with those guys doing that than a horn section that is just like when they're not playing, they're just.
With Maynard, we were doing the song, and there was a break in it. It was ba-ba-ba-da-ba, Dennis de Blasio's Coconut Champagne. Ba-ba-ba-da-ba, and there was a double bass cut. I'll play real soft, but ba-ba-ba-da-ba. Maynard loved the double pedal and the whole thing. And at one time I did this. He goes, when you did that stick throwing thing, a bunch of people out there, you really liked it, and I'm not telling you what to do, but keep it in the act if you want.
I think showmanship is great. We are showmen when we're up on a stage and we're in a performing arts center and people are just sitting in their seats looking at what we're doing. So I think that it goes beyond the music. I think that we have to be able to find a way to infect the audience with our love of the music and our respect of the music.
Showmanship it's an equally important part of it. You know, there was a time years ago in the big band days where the big band wasn't just sitting down playing the charts, but it was getting up, and you see the old movies where, you know, the movement and the whole thing. This translated into the R&B small horn sections that you see. So the showmanship, you know, is a part of it. Nobody wants to see you play in the groove and just stand there kind of looking dull.
On this Ringo tour I'm doing this summer, Edgar Winter, who's one of the All-Stars, he's doing Frankenstein. And he said, if you feel weird about this, it's cool, but have you ever played with light-up drumsticks? No, I never have. He said, well, I know you're a Vic Firth guy. I said, yeah, I'm a Vic Firth guy. He said, could you call him and see if you could get it? These are like $100 a pair. You plug them in to your computer with USB ports, and they charge. And I don't know if these have charged or not yet. Oh, yes, they have. So we've got light-up drumsticks. Now, you can have red. Or you can have different colors. Yeah, I'm not into showmanship. A lot of jazz guys that I hang out with, you know, they started to bag on the rock showmanship because you see showmanship more among rock bands. And then I said, wait a minute. Let me play you some of this stuff with Sonny Payne, with Count Basie. You've never seen a drummer with more showmanship stuff than Sonny Payne. Always grooving, but amazing showman. And Count Basie ate that up. He loved it. So I am a big fan of showmanship if it doesn't get in the way of what you're doing.
Do what you are capable and feel like doing. Nobody has the right to tell you you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Do your own thing. Lionel Hampton and Louis Armstrong really were the first rock and roll bands. Ham had all those jazz musicians, but he had a rock and roll sensibility, man. He would not leave till people were jumping off the ceilings. Dizzy? Are you kidding? Charlie Parker be still there at the thing, because it's high, and Dizzy be all over the place.
We're talking about entertaining. We're also talking about your attitude toward the music. You might be asked to wear, if you're on a Dixieland band, you might be asked to wear a band around your arm and a straw hat or something like that. But you can't be offended by that. You have to act as if this is my bag. I'm doing this and I'm entertaining. I'm selling this music. Showmanship is very important because you have people looking at you. You can't pick your nose, scratch your behind, stuff like that. You have to dance, and there's a routine. And with any tour, you watch musicians are moving, and they're dancing, and they're selling, and they're smiling when they are not playing. Like my dad says, sell it. Don't give it away, sell it.
Fun is important because fun translates itself into your playing. Having fun with it makes the performance actually better. It's a very subtle point, but it does.
I want to hear somebody who can, again, play their horn, play in tune, all the basic things. But what the intangible things that they can bring, such as just having a good time, enjoy being there.
Music is a performance art. If you're on a stage, if you're in a studio, it's one thing, but it is a performance art, and it's so critical that the performer is engaged 100% in what the music he does. And if he's engaged, he's going to perform it. And whether that means he's turning his back on the audience like Miles did in certain periods of his career, or whether he's jumping up and down like maybe Pete Townsend of The Who, there's an element of performance. He's engaged, and people are watching him be 100% immersed in his music.
I think it has to be genuine. That's just my own take on it. You have to genuinely enjoy what you're doing, and it has to transmit to the audience. People are paying their hard-earned dollars to go see you, so you have to find a way to earn their respect and earn their money.
I think he won't be engaged if he feels like he's superior to the music, and it's such a cool thing to be able to play music and do this and perform in front of people. I mean, I don't need to tell you, Harry, you've been on so many stages in front of thousands of people. We need to give 100% of ourselves to do that. And if you're just phoning it in, then you should be doing another job.
And if it looks like you're not having a good time, that's going to translate to the people watching the show and all the other musicians that watch the show. And what we do and what we're asked to do, why would you not love it? Why would you not want to have a good time? Why would you not, if the guys in front of you are moving a little bit, so you move. Hey, I can move, I can do this, What you have to do is, again, bottom line is enjoy. Have fun. How lucky we are to do what we do and get paid for it.
We're doing some fun jobs, and then we say, man, all these weird things we have to do to keep from working, It's a great thing. It is fun, and we talk about showmanship. The reason I brought this up in the interviews is because I've heard a lot of people debating this thing, and then some people think it's stupid. Some people think that it distracts from the performance, it takes away from your performance. But, this one guy talked about being engaged in the music. True showmanship, but the other guy mentioned it has to be genuine. True showmanship comes when you're totally engaged in the music and when you're really involved with what's going on. If you're feeling something inside, why not show it? Because this will infect the audience. You know, you're playing something, if you feel inside, you know, you got guys playing over here like this, but, you know, if you start feeling it, go ahead and show it. It's okay, because too many musicians separate the fact that they're being watched. They want to be snobs, and they say, I just play, I don't want to be a showman. But it's part of it, especially when people are paying top dollars. You know, some of these concerts that I do with the different, $300, $500 for a seat in the front. They don't want to see a guy standing there just like, you know, they want to see somebody that's bigger than life. And then you take that role. You accept that role. You're an entertainer. You're going to play your butt off when you're playing, but you're also going to give them a show, a real, genuine show, because you have to learn to feel what you're doing. You know, one of the things is you don't want to be a clown. You don't have to be a clown. One of the things that upsets me also is when I play with musicians who feel ridiculous moving on stage or doing anything on stage. You know, they think it's a ridiculous thing to do because as a musician, as a performer, it's about the art and all this kind of stuff. Well, stop being such a snob. It's about the whole thing. So then they start making fun out of it. I've worked with guys standing right next to me. They think it's ridiculous. They move a little bit, you know, and they go, okay. And then they start making fun of themselves. Well, guess what? Then they look ridiculous. They end up looking ridiculous because they don't believe what they're doing. You know, you got to understand, it's all a part of it, in my world, of course, you know. But even in the classical world, I've seen, you know, great soloists, you know, they emote when they play. You know, they're not just standing there and doing this. The great soloists, they're giving you a show, man. You see a pianist, you know, they don't do that at home. You know what I'm talking about? They're in front of people. But they're feeling it. Now, all of a sudden, it becomes something else because you got so much passion going on. This is the thing that young people, or not just young people, people of all ages run into. You know, come on, let's just move a little bit and move with the groove. You know, that means you're engaged. When you become engaged, you get your audience engaged with you. They want to see that. They want to feel that, because the average person over there is not going to be so cerebral. They're going to stand there and just listen to the music. It's a funny story, man. I was in Munich one time, and I went to hear a brass chorale concert in a church, and it was weird. a bunch of us American guys, we went into this church, and first of all, you sit in the church, you face forward, and the brass chorale was up in the organ balcony up behind you, so you couldn't see them. You know, and they're playing this great stuff, and then we applauded after, and everybody's looking at it. You don't applaud either, you know. And somebody said maybe because it was in a church or something. But what kind of performance is that? You know, you sit there, maybe that's something that goes back from the Renaissance days or something. But we live in a time of visual stimulation. Since film, TV, we need the visual stimulation as well. It comes with the sound, you know. And so there's nothing wrong with it. Develop that ability, lose your inhibitions, you know, start to understand, love the music you're playing passionately, and then perform it passionately, like that piano player, you know. All right, it's time for the 7th inning stretch. So I put together a little exercise for everybody, and it's hand clapping. I thought about this the other night. I thought it'd be really good to start clapping some rhythms out. I wrote some rhythms out that you'll see up on the screen. And what it is I wrote some rhythms out that are problems for a lot of horn players. And you'll see as they develop. But this particular exercise has a couple of different aims. First of all, to listen to the drums, because I just have a drum track to play to, and play in time with it. Don't flam. You know, it's backbeat stuff. It's going to start with the backbeat. I need you guys to clap exactly with the backbeat. But there's another aim to this. The other aim is to be able to do this with all your heart. I don't want you to be intimidated by the person next to you. I want you to actually clap and feel this. And then the third aim is I want you eventually to have fun doing this. And experience what that feels like when you're playing in a band and you're just slamming it and then having a great time, and you come off the stage and it's the best thing you ever did. You can't wait for tomorrow, you know, for your next performance. So those 3 goals. So everybody stand up. Everybody stand up. It's the 7th inning stretch. right? And we're going to start out with, where are we here? All right. We never rehearsed this part, so we're kind of winging it right now. All right, so while they're doing that, let me tell you a few things. Oh, by the way, these slides, I wrote them out by hand the other day, so a lot of you young people who have never seen handwritten music, that's what it looks like. That's like, you know, if you ever go to Carnegie Hall, in the back, artist entrance and stuff like that, you see actual handwritten manuscripts by Beethoven and Mozart. It's really fascinating. So there's mine. So anybody who wants them, I'll sell them on eBay. Yeah. You figuring something out? All right. Anyway, but I thought about doing this because I thought you needed the break. So let's take a moment of silence while we figure. Talk amongst yourselves. Hey, are there any questions so far? I welcome questions because sometimes I don't explain things right.
What percentage of your video made it into the final thing we saw?
Well, I'll tell you. You see a lot of cuts because I find that what I discovered is that people can't speak in complete sentences. What they do, they start making a point, but they don't complete it till way later, and they fill it up with a whole bunch of other stuff, and then what you want to hear is like over here. So that's why you see so many edits. What percentage? A very small percentage, actually, because each interview averaged about a half hour. And I just took out the points that I needed for this. I didn't do this to manipulate you guys at all. This is actual stuff. I didn't do, what do they call that when you take something out and make it out of context to make it sound like something else? I didn't do that, you know. What? It's the funk pattern. Yes, the first one. But basically, that's what it is. They didn't get to the point. They had all this stuff in between, didn't get to the point. Hold on.
Back to learning to play in the pocket with the rhythm section, one of the first points you made. A good way to practice that at home would have a live rhythm section. Play with records or what?
Absolutely. Play with records. You know, this one thing I wanted to talk about, you know, because I noticed that you know, I've helped coach like big bands, college big bands before, and I noticed that everybody plays timidly. They're very timid about what they do, even when they tune up. You know, everybody's sharp because they're not playing their horn. They're tuned up, and everybody's sharp. Everybody's looking at a tuner. They're all sharp because they're not playing out. They're very timid about what they're doing. And this is the thing I would talk about, being passionate about what you do. When you're getting ready for a performance with a big band or an ensemble or anything, I always suggest take your part, go to your room where nobody can see you because you're going to look crazy. Lock the door and start singing the part. Sing the part to you out loud with all your heart, the way you imagine it should be performed. Get used to that because this is part of becoming an extrovert. You cannot be an introvert and play horn, you know, so do this. I mean, next time you got a jazz band concert to prepare for or something like that, take the parts, lock yourself up with somewhere nobody can hear you, and start singing the parts. Sing it out loud. If you could sing it, you could play it. I mean, you just sing it with all your heart. Sing it out. And it's going to help your performance because you're not going to sit there and be, you know, you want to slam it out there, you know. Of course, everybody together. But that's part of it. You listen to records. You play along with records. The best, of course, is to play with other musicians. But I think the records is better, you know, because I've met a lot of European musicians that want to play funk and R&B and stuff, and they don't quite have it because they haven't played with those guys. You got to have them next to you. That's why the practical experience is really important, and you got to find those places to get out and play. Any other questions?
Yeah, when you lost your point before, you were going to say something about playing something that wasn't written on the music. You just started.
Oh, very good. You're listening. Well, yeah, you know, a lot of times in my world, you got arrangers aren't specific about details. So you have, this is where your expertise comes in. This should be articulated a certain way. There should be a crescendo here because there's a modulation coming. You might have a bunch of whole notes going into modulation and there's no crescendo written here. And a lot of guys will just play those whole notes. You know, it's written pianissimo or piano and they just play piano and then they go into the modulation. But I don't feel it that way. You know, there's a little thing that's going to happen. I mean, you're going into a modulation. It's going to go into a new key. Now, give them a little bit of something. Don't stay pianissimo the whole way through. You know, these are instincts, the musical instincts. Don't be afraid to express your musical instincts in music. I don't know, you know, how it is in the classical world, if they have the liberties to do that. But it's certainly in my world that you do, and you make those suggestions to the producer. Can we do this? So do you like the way we did this? And they go, yeah, sure, great. This is part of what makes you useful and what I like to call indispensable, because there's indispensability is important. I'm sorry about the 7-inning stretch. You can sit down for a second till it starts, but I always believe that musicians should make themselves indispensable, and other people laugh. How are you going to be indispensable as a horn player? Well, you know, I was kind of successful at doing that, and part of it, well, it has to do with interpretation. Give them an interpretation that they didn't even expect. Something that, you know, you have their music written, and they go, wow, that sounds better than I expected. You can also contribute things in the music and change things that makes it better. And then especially when you have a horn section, it's teamwork. You know, my philosophy about horn lines in pop music is if you imagine that you are a saxophone soloist behind a singer, and you're playing little licks and you're playing little lines. Now, as an arranger, that's how I think. I think linearly all the time. The singer's singing, I'm hearing the track, and I write the lines that are in line with rhythm, stay in the pocket, but still have that functionality of accompanying a singer, right? Now, when you're in a horn section, you look at your line, and you interpret that like, this is a solo line. How, if I were a soloist, how would I interpret this line? How would I phrase it? How would I articulate it? Now, you get 4 or 5 guys to articulate something like that, it's going to sound so great. And it's going to sound so different that no other horn section come in and duplicate it, you know, unless they studied your recordings or something. Because they're just going to read the notes. My philosophy is if you go in just to read the notes, you're going to be a marching band. Marching bands do this. There's so many things you could do to a line as a soloist. You know, with a soloist mentality, you might have ba 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 ba. That's how it's written. You know, you go in there. Oh no, this is ba 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 ba. You know, you give it a little lift here and a little inflection here, and like that personalizes it. So then you get the 4 of you, the 5 of you, the 7 of you playing it that way. The producer's going to go, wow, the leader, the singer, anybody. They turn around and go, we never heard it like that before. They want to call you every single time. So you want to try to become indispensable in any way you can. And that also, you know, when you're not there, they miss you. You want that too. So, that's right. Let's get to these rhythms. All right, so this is the drum beat we're going to play to. So rhythm 1 is basically just the backbeat, all right? So turn the track up, and let's clap the backbeat. Great. No flamming, no flamming. Turn the track up a little more. Okay, let's go to number 2. Now I added an 8th note there because a lot of times that's a problem for horn sections to play. So he's flamming already. Get it? Flamming. You guys are flamming. Now, some people, you might have to keep rhythm with your body. Keep the time with your body. This is part about engagement. You guys are shy, right? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the guy next to you. Feel it in your body. That's right. That's good. No flamming. All right, let's close. We're going to 3. right, let's have fun with it now. No flaring. Can you hear the track enough? Loud enough? Turn the track up. Okay, go to number 4. Here's more problem spots. Horn players having trouble with these kind of rhythms. I want you guys to sound like a machine. The last 2 16ths, a lot of times, are trouble spots for horn sections. All right, stop the track. Stop the track. All right, everybody take a good look at that and analyze it in your brain what it should be. Just stop the track. All right, take a good look at that. Oh. Yeah, see that last 2 16ths, a lot of times when you play horn section, they'll have trouble with that. You know, everything else kind of, you know, remember, beat 2 is with the backbeat, beat 2 is with the backbeat. That last one throws people, unless you're a tight horn section. That's part of it. So look at it and mentally absorb that, and let's try that one again with the track. Clap it with conviction, as if you were a drum. Because this is the way you would play it as a horn player. You would play it that way with conviction. Go to the next one. All right, number 5. More trouble spots. Upbeats, making the difference between an upbeat and a second 16th of a beat. Always throws horn players off. So let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, Take a look at it. All right, stop clapping. Rest your hands for a second. Take a look at it, analyze it, figure it out, and then I'll count you in. Now remember, it's really important to play these rhythms as if you were a drummer, because this is the approach when you play these things on your horn in a funk band or something like that. You guys got it? You ready to try it? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now listen for the backbeats on the snare drum. So you want to stay with them. That's good. Let's move on to the next one. All right, we're at number 6. Again, more trouble spots. Look at it. Look at it for a second. Look at it. You guys ready? Yay or nay? All right. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You guys are good. That's really good. Go on to the next one. I stood up, what was it, Thursday night. I just stood up thinking, well, what would be hard for a horn player to play? So I thought of these up. I didn't even analyze them or anything. Let's try. Look at number 7. Can you pull it up a little bit so they can see it? Okay. Let's do number 7. Now the difficulty in number 7 is to make the difference between an upbeat and a second 16th. It's really important to be able to distinguish those things. And it's a trap for horn players all the time when there's figures like this. And believe me, we see figures like this all the time, you know. Or I do anyway. Or I write figures like this. You ready? You're still studying it. Okay, I'll give you a second. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. Put the upbeats where the upbeats should be. Make sure the upbeats are where. Don't slam on the back, please. All right, now everybody take a look at number 8. See, this is part of playing in the pocket. Right now we're playing with a machine, a drum machine. You know, in a live situation, the drummer will have a different pocket. He might be a little bit behind. It stays in time. It's hard to measure, you know, but even though it stays in time, it's slightly behind. It's hard to explain, but this is what they call the pocket. But this is training so you can hear the pocket. You start to listen. Right now we're playing with this track. This is the pocket. So take a look at number 8, and we're going to play it in a minute. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now what I wanted you to do is, everybody pick any one you want, and we'll play them together, all right? But I want to hear a groove now, all right? It shouldn't just sound like a mess, all right? Everybody visually pick out the one you want to play, and it should sound like, are you guys familiar with flamenco music? When you hear the hand clapping in flamenco music, you hear 16th notes. But everybody who's clapping are not clapping 16th notes. You guys got clapping 8th notes, and then you got guys clapping on the up 16th. And it put together, it sounds like 16th notes. So this should end up actually sounding like 16th notes. Ready? Everybody pick what you want. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, can you guys hear it? Like there's little interaction going on between each other. Can you hear it? Or are you still too focused reading? All right, you want to get to the point now. You're reading that stuff, but you're going to feel the interaction that's going on with the rhythm amongst yourselves. And once you get that, then you start really grooving. All right? 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now have some fun, have some fun. That's really cool, I just heard it. That's what I'm hearing. Give yourselves a round of applause for that. That's really good. That's really good. From here, from where I'm standing, I heard this really complex but beautiful rhythm going on. It was like a chicka 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 chicka. It's really cool. Thank you. Give yourselves a round of applause. All right. So we did that. Does anybody need a break to go to the bathroom or anything? You did it already. In your pants? All right. So let's go on to the next section. Oh, wait, hold on. I think maybe I wanted to say something about the. Oh, I did. Say again? AC? You know what? You're feeling the groove. That's what's happening. No. Can we turn the AC up here? All right. We're going to get Jeff to check it out. You know, this thing about it, he can't change it, it's remote. Yeah. It was. Okay. All right. You can take your shirt off.
It's cooler down front.
Yeah. It probably is. All right. Because I'm here, you know. Oh, okay. All right, one thing I wanted to tell you about engaging people, engaging your audience, and this is, this has not been scientifically proven, but I truly believe that music has a huge effect on people, and especially when you feel it and you express it with passion. I think that music has a healing effect on people. I've had many experiences in my life, and I'll just give you one experience. I had a lady call me one time in 1991. The Phil Collins album, But Seriously, had been released, I think, in 90. And this lady called me, and she told me that 1989 and 90 were some really bad years for her because there were a lot of sudden deaths in her family and all this stuff, and that she was in this huge depression. I mean, very bad, one of those clinical depressions where you're sleeping all day and crying and all this kind of stuff. And she called me to tell me that a friend of hers had given her this Phil Collins record, the CD, for Christmas. But she didn't open it. She didn't listen to it. And this is spring now of 91. She had it for quite a few months. And then she put it on and listened to it one day. Now, if you ever heard this album, the first song on the But Seriously album starts with a horn flurry, what I call a flurry, where it's like a, and it sounds really cool. But she said that this horn lick was like a slap in the face to her. And, she said it woke her up and got her out of her depression, And she had to find me. She called every area code in California to find me, to tell me this. That's just one small thing. Music has amazing effects on people. So every time you play, the reason why you want to engage yourself in the music is because when you engage others, you have an effect on them, and hopefully a positive effect. There's a really terrific speech, a lecture that a guy named, what's his name, Carl Palmack, you could look this up on Google. he did a speech at the Boston Conservatory. So look up Boston Conservatory speech, and it talked about the healing power of music. And I recommend you all read it if you're a student. It's an amazing thing. He talks about 9/11 and how at such a horrible time, the only thing that healed was music. And he goes on. It's a lengthy essay, and it's something worth reading. So take a look at that, Boston Conservatory speech. Look that up in Google. All right, we're going to move on to the next topic.
Walking in and with an incredibly arrogant attitude.
When you see a musician that is a little bit arrogant, and first of all, if he doesn't play good and he's arrogant, you don't want to see him again.
If you walk in, it's like you're the God's gift to, the trumpet or the conga or the bass, and you just have a chip on your shoulder. But if you got all that stuff, all the intonation, all the rhythm in the world, all the stuff, and you got a bad attitude, I don't want to play with you. You got to be a nice person.
What turns me off is a musician that is so into himself that he thinks that he's doing you a favor by being hired.
Turning their nose up on the music, that's a big turnoff. As if they are superior to performing this style of music. There are two kinds of music. There's good music and there's bad music.
Let's say you excel in playing rock. You know every song that Blood, Sweat, and Tears did in Tower of Power, and you can play everything. Or the Phil Collins horns, you're the horns. They know everything you played, and they can do that, and they can do that time and time again, And then they said, well, what show do you? Oh, you dance with us? Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Boy, you got to play a lot of dumb music, like waltzes and stuff like that.
Usually when you run into people who are snobby about the music, there are people who don't know how to play it. Occasionally you run into guys who don't know how to play it, but they have the utmost respect for what we do on the level that we do it.
What turns me off, again, is tardiness. Being on time is very important, because what can turn a conductor or a leader off worse than anything is not being punctual.
People who don't show respect in terms of being responsible, in terms of being on time, in terms of, letting their ego take over the situation and not interpreting the music as a group as opposed to an individual.
What turns me off is somebody that's overly self-promoting. You have to be confident, but you can't be in my face.
I have to boil it down to ego. I think that's the bottom line. Somebody's going to come in and, hey, how you doing? Rick Babb, yeah, oh man, listen, I love your playing. And, one of these days I really want to be able to play with you so that you can hear me play. And a lot of me, I hate that me stuff, It's like going for first impression for a job. You're not going to show up, in ratty clothes and holes in your socks and say, oh, yeah, I want to be a lawyer in your firm. Never happened.
Don't ever be a musical snob. I know guys that are labeled as, oh, he's a jazz redneck. What's a jazz redneck? Oh, if he doesn't play this hip jazz thing, he's complaining. Jazz guys that say, I want to be a rock drummer. I want to play these big rock tours. Do you like rock? Do you listen to the Stones, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, the Police, the Foo Fighters? No. I'm a jazz guy. Well, why do you want a rock gig? Well, they make a lot more money on the rock tours. You gotta like the style. Don't be a snob, a musical snob. Like everything. Duke Ellington once said there's two kinds of music, good music and bad music.
As musicians, whether you like it or not, we are entertainers. And you might be asked to do some steps. You might be asked to sell what you're doing. This is very important. You can't be so into yourself that you say, I'm a professional and I'm a musician, I'm an artist, and I'm not going to give anything but playing my instrument. That's the wrong approach. But when you're on the stage, you have to play and sell what you're doing.
When the work is hard and we're tired, there's always some joke, whether it's a band joke, a musical joke, or something that I will tell. and to keep everybody happy. And I worked in certain situations where the whole band is left, and I looked around, and there's someone sitting there that says, basically is saying in their facial expression, what was that all about? And that's the last time that person has ever worked for me. Wonderful player, brings everything to the table except joy.
Just didn't realize how hard it is to be a professional. You know, okay, so everything's self-explanatory there. It's in your booklet still. You know, being arrogant. You know, nobody wants arrogant people around them. Not being a team player. One of the things about not being a team player that I encounter that turns me off are people who resist ideas or changes. Oh gosh, there's times that, you know, let's play it like this. No, the composer doesn't want it that way, or the arranger doesn't want it. Well, let him hear it so that, you know, he might like it. No. You know, resistance. I'm used to personalizing, as I said earlier. You personalize stuff, and then you let the composer or the producer or the arranger listen to it and see if they like it. You know, let them be the judge. But when you get a musician who judges it for you, you know, that to me is a huge downer. So that's, you know, part of the not being a team player thing. You know, musicians that are disengaged. Those are musicians who are not into the music. They're just sitting there. They're looking at their watch. Oh, I hate that. You're doing a session. You might be producing. I might be the producer, or I might be the leader of a recording session. And guys are looking at their watch. You know, come on, stop that. You know, that's signs of disengagement. Also, I'm not into that. People that are self-promoting. You know, I told you about people that are constantly bugging you and making their presence known. That's a drag. Kissing up, you know, that's something that contractors don't like. You know, I'm not a contractor. I'm a trumpet player. I happen to, you know, work a lot. And when people are kissing up to me, you know, don't like that. So be careful you don't do that. You know, being insincere. There's a lot of musicians, I've seen it, that, you know, you're having a conversation with them, and they're looking around the room to see who's there. You know, if Quincy Jones walks by, they leave you in the middle of your sentence to go to Quincy Jones or something like that. You know, be careful. Insincerity can be easily spotted. And, you know, there's a saying, and this goes for any business you go into. Sincerity is the key to success. Once you learn to fake it, you've got it made. So that's, remember that. It's important. All right. So, you know, being a snob towards the music, being a snob towards other people. Gosh, I've seen musicians, and I don't know, I think people learn this in certain colleges, but they treat other musicians, their fellow musicians, according to how well they play. You know, that's really not very nice. You know, if you're not a very good player, they just snuff you off. You know, I think you should be kind to everybody. Always be kind to everybody. Learn that. Now, you know, you'll run into people in colleges that are, you know, those alpha dogs. You got to be careful, because if you are one, you got to learn to treat everybody nicely, because a lot of times you meet them on your way down, you know, as they say, you know. And you got to be careful not to be too eager. You know, this thing of, hey man, you need a trumpet player? Hey man, get me on one of your gigs and all this kind of stuff. That's too eager. You know, slow down, relax. You know, if it's time, it'll be your time, it'll be your time. But don't be too eager, because that turns people off a lot. Of course, being late, being a complainer, you know, musicians that complain about a job, you know, they're complaining at a wedding. You know, you're doing a wedding, they're complaining about this, they're complaining about that. There's also a saying that, you know, the best way to make a musician complain is to get him a job. You know, because they'll find something to complain about. The hotel's not good, you know, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, there are a few things that are my personal big turnoffs, and I know I wrote them down here. People that can't follow instructions. You know, a lot of times I'm a horn section leader on jobs, and when you go on a recording, we call them dates, by the way. They mentioned the word dates before. I don't want you to think that we're dating other people or anything. But recording date, they call it, so we call it dates. A lot of times at a date or a show or something, there's a lot of last-minute changes. You know, we're going to cut out the second verse, so jump from letter C to leave out letter D, go straight to E, things like that. or there's a chord change. It was an E minor, now it's a G major at a certain bar, and people that are just not following this, they're like, huh? You know, they can't follow instructions. That really irks me when these things are happening. And people that can't notate changes, like they may be something like, okay, we're leaving out the first 4 bars of the intro, and we're gonna play ba-da-da-da right there. And they don't write it down. And you go, how are you gonna remember to do that? You know, we got 20 songs in this show. When this song comes out, you're gonna remember that? And then you see them, they start notating, they don't know how to notate it. You know, you're a musician, you should know the language. So you should study notation. You should know how to write a little bit, you know? The other part is people with no knowledge of theory. I think it's important as a musician you study theory, you know, because a lot of times I'm saying, you know, okay, let's add a chord here. Let's add a +9 +5. Let's add a B, you know, B +9 +5. And I'll say, okay, you played a +5, you played a this, you played a this. And they look at you like, what is it? I say, it's a B +9. Well, you should know how that chord is spelled. You know, if I say that you played a third, you should know what the third of a B +9 is, or you know what I mean? Yeah, I think that's important because it saves time. It makes life easier for me. I don't want to have to grab you apart and write it out. No. I say play the third, play the fifth, play of any chord, play the seventh. You know, if I say play the seventh of an A7, you know what it is? Do you know what it is? Oh. Do you know what the 7th of an A7 chord is? Right off the bat? Yeah, right. You'd be surprised how many professional musicians don't know that. You know, you play the third. What's the third? C sharp, right? You know, it should come automatic. That irks me when I'm working with musicians that don't know, and I have to spell out things for them because I guess I'm too demanding. I don't know. But those 3 things. I think musicians should study, what do they call that? Dictation. And dictation, because a lot of times somebody will sing something to you, you know, an artist or a musical director or a producer say, you know, right over here, play beep-a-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, and you know, you should be able to hear it a couple times and write it down. Don't fumble around with finding it and all this kind of stuff. I mean, most people do that, but that's one of the things that irks me is people that are slow in picking up something somebody's saying to you. So take sight singing and dictation. It's really important, you know, in the musical world. When I auditioned for Stevie Wonder, 1974 or something like this, 74, 75. I was 5 years old, of course. But they had 8 trumpet players. The audition was 8 trumpet players, and Stevie Wonder came in, and he played something that later became famous because this particular CD was not released yet. But he sat at the organ and he said, the first guy who gets this, who can play this, gets the job. Anyway, Bob, ba-dee-da, ba-dee-da, ba-doo, ba-doo-da, I don't know. You guys know this? From Sir Duke, Stevie Wonder, right? So nobody knew this because the CD hadn't come out yet. Nobody knew this. And, you know, luckily in high school, I took sight singing and dictation. To start off with, it was in a bad key for trumpet, you know. And, but I learned it 4 bars at a time. He played it a bunch of times, and I got it 4 bars at a time. I didn't even have to play it. I just, in my ear, I could hear it, and I could figure it out. And then I played it, and I got the gig. But Stevie at the time was apparently famous for turning the horn section and singing them lines, and then in concert, you know, spontaneously. So you had to be able to pick up these things. This is what this audition was about, to see if you had an ear, a good enough ear to pick up stuff. But this happens all the time. A producer will sing stuff to you. You know, a lot of times there's no arrangement written, so you have to be able to pick this up and be able to do it. So think about it. Take that.
Nowadays, they'll say, well, let me play you the demo, and they'll give you a legal pad and a Sharpie. And as a drummer, as a trumpet player, as a horn player or a drummer, these drummers don't have to worry about pitch and what, you know, writing out their horn parts. But as a drummer, if you can't take that blank legal pad and a Sharpie, and in no more than 2 listens, you got your little rhythm watch, which I take to every gig, or a Dr. Beat, you get the tempo, You write the dynamics, you write the phrases. How many bars are the intros? 8. How many bars for the verse? 16. Oh, then a 4-bar B section, then the chorus. It should be on the bell. Okay, that's my first listen. I got the roadmap. Second listen, what are the fills? What's the loop doing? You got to be able to go literally that fast, or they'll just call somebody else next time because time is money. And I've been on sessions where the whole band, horn players too, have had to write out parts. You have to do everything in this day and age as a drummer, I know for sure, and I'm sure as a trumpet player. You have to be able to play rock, pop, hip hop, country, bebop. Once you've gotten those styles together and you're ready to jump off that diving board, the thing that breaks the camel's back for me with college students is, I haven't really worked on transcribing. You better work on it pretty fast because they don't always have charts.
Make this like a project. You know, you might say, okay, there's going to be 6 months before the band. So we used to do. It took months to get a band together. You know, except we were looking for a record deal. You guys are just looking for a job, and you could find a job. This part also is, you know, creating opportunity. Go to every club owner. Go to everybody you know, and let the news out that you got a band for hire. You know, there's all kinds of deals you can make. You know, you could work at a really cool bar somewhere and then work for the door on a Monday night, say, or an off night, a night that they don't have very much business. You offer your services, you work for the door. Even some nights you might work for free. You know, most of the time you end up spending more at the bar than you actually make that night. But yeah, but you'd be surprised. You know, sometimes this place gets packed and everybody starts making some money. And if you make a project out of this, you know, you want to do this for the next 2-3 years. And I think the most important thing you'll learn out of this is whether you want to do this for the rest of your life. Because it's a lot of sacrifice, man. You sacrifice going to parties, you sacrifice dating, and doing all this stuff that people want to do. Well, if you're not willing to sacrifice that, then you shouldn't be in this business. You know, it's a tough life because it's a sacrifice because your main goal and your main focus is working. And staying away of working and being able to subsidize this little hobby of yours that's called music, you know. So I think everybody should put a band together. Try it, you know. Put that on your list of to-dos. And especially if you're in school, you know, you got 2, 3, 4 years to do it. Do it. There's nothing wrong with it. You learn a lot, I'm telling you. And so I encourage that big time. And, okay, so I'm going to close this now. I think in the video, when we started hearing, the most significant thing that we heard, it was the very opening when Quincy Jones says, first of all, you got to love it. You know, this is not for everybody. A career in music is not for everybody. You know, I think that if you don't feel a passion or if you don't feel like you can sacrifice a lot of other things in life just to play, then it's not for you. You know, there's a lot of people that move on and do other things that become very successful and they just play the trumpet or something on the side, you know. But if it's your passion to do it, you do it. But if it's not, you'll soon find out. Somewhere in your college career, you'll find out, oh, this is not really for me. Let me change my major and all this kind of stuff. Also, you got people like me. You have your aunts and uncles and your parents all say, you know, I don't think you should do this. I think you should study something you could fall back on and all this kind of stuff, you know. Because I think they're valuable elements in life because I think in any business like this, like the arts, music, if you can get talked out of it, you'll never make it, you know. So if you ever do get talked out of it, or you yourself talk yourself out of it, I think you should move on with a clear conscience. Don't ever wonder, wow, I wonder if I would have made it. Don't even wonder. You wouldn't have. You got talked out of it, you talked yourself out of it. Move on. Be aware, though, that there's a lot of careers that are related to music. You know, there's audio engineers. Audio engineers is so valuable to be a musician and to know about music, to be a good audio engineer. There's opportunities in music editing for films, for TV, all kinds of music-related things. Contracting. A contractor, what he does is he's got to be good people skills, though. Makes contact with all the theaters, with all the party planners and whatnot. He's the one that calls the musicians for jobs. Pretty good job, because you don't really do anything but make calls and you get double what everybody else makes. But music-related careers are all there. If you find that on your instrument you have not advanced as far as you would have hoped at a certain age or something, don't just move on. Just move on and feel with a clear conscience. It's really important to do that. And like I said, music business is not for everybody. I was talking to people for the last few days about trumpet, and I've come to realize I thought of this morning, so I kind of made a note of it. I gotta clear my mind. But I want to let you guys know, in music, specifically trumpet, teachers are there to guide you. You shouldn't. You got to be careful sometimes with teachers, because in my mind, a teacher could teach you how to develop technique. They could guide you as to what books you should practice and all this kind of stuff. But I think when it comes to chops, chops meaning somebody asked me this morning, how do you play a high G? How do you do this? How do you do that? A teacher can't teach you that. He could guide you as to what he thinks. See, I know a lot about chops, my chops. I can't crawl into your mouth and tell you what you're doing and stuff like that. It's really trumpet is an amazing thing. You have to figure it out on your own. So what a teacher has to do is guide you so that you can discover how to do these things. You don't learn how to do it. You discover it on your own. And you got to remember that. You go to your teachers, you're depending on your teacher to teach you how to play a high G. He's not. A wise teacher will open the doors in your mind so that you can explore. You don't learn it, you discover it. One day you go, wow, if I turn my tongue a certain way, there it is. You discovered it. That teacher couldn't tell you that's what you got to do because he doesn't know what you're feeling, So keep that in mind. As I say, I thought of this morning to tell you guys because I heard a lot of comments from you guys in the last couple of days. So they can't teach you that. It's a discovery. You have to discover it on your own. So that's part of it. And then just in review, in the music business and in life in general, remember the golden rule. It works. It works because at the end of it all, when you guys get to be my age, it's about what people remember you for, and you want to go do a job like this today, and then you want people not to say, oh, that Harry Kim, what a creep he was, or like that, he's gone, or something like that. Because you remember, as a human being, you're here to serve each other all the time. Even when you're a leader, you're serving everybody else, So it's important to know what it's like to be the sideman, to be the leader, and always approach it the same way. The golden rule, you don't have to be Christian or anything. It's not a matter of theology. It's a matter of what it means, and it works. Just think about what it's saying. If the whole world really believed that, what the world would be like, and practiced it. So it's not a matter of religion or anything like that. It just happens to be a statement that was made that you go, wow, let's practice this, and it'll make the world a better place. You yourself can make the world a better place. So remember the golden rule. I jotted down some things that you encounter in my life. I've encountered disappointments. I wanted a certain job, didn't get it. And I've seen the way other people deal with that. They get jealous, they get upset, and they start with that person doesn't deserve that job and all that stuff. No, man, what you got to do is, be happy and rejoice and celebrate that person got the job. Don't think about your loss. You think about the other person's gain, and that person maybe needed it worse than you did. So it's really good. So you relieve your mind. Maybe you call it rationalization, whatever. But don't dwell on loss and disappointment. You move on and you celebrate other people's gains. That's really important in life. You know, um, I wanted to talk about this. You know, I think ability and talent is a gift. It's a real God-given gift. When I talk about this, I get weird. But, you know, when you got a gift, like say, you know, your father buys you a new car. You don't go around telling your friends, look what I bought. Look what I worked for. You say, look what my dad gave me. Isn't it great? And everybody rejoices for it, you know. So when you got a talent, when you got an ability, you got to recognize that you have nothing to do with it. It was given to you. So now you take this and you use it for good. And what I'm talking about, when you play, when you perform, you do it with passion. You try to affect people in a good way all the time. You don't use it to boost and validate your own ego. I mean, I'm preaching right now, I shouldn't be. But this is something I truly believe in. I see people do it all the time. Oh, I'm so talented. I'm so gifted. I'm so great. Yeah, it's not you. You know, stop it. And people like that end up not being much of a benefit to the world. And I could say this because I'm an older guy. I've seen this happen. You know, so use your gifts for good all the time. And in the back of this thing, I wrote a little something that I really believe. It's the last page of this, and I call it loving what you do. Because a career in the arts is a love affair, it's not an investment. And I believe that this also pertains to real life, not just music or the arts. A love affair, you know, what's important about a love affair is what you put into it, not what you expect to get out of it. And all those you guys who are maybe engaged or something, you should think about this, because it's not about what you want out of it. It's about how much you put into it. You know, being in love with something is about just enjoying being in love. It's simply that. And the more you're in love with it, the more you put into it. You don't feed love with what you can get out of it. You know, so music is like that. You don't weigh it down with baggage and expectations. And this one thing, the last line of this is truly, I believe this, I've discovered that once you discover how much joy there is to play music, you'll want to spend the rest of your life acquiring the tools to better express that. You'll see guys in their 80s still searching for mouthpieces, still checking out equipment, still practicing, still taking lessons, because you know what it's like to be joyful about music, and you spend the rest, it's never ending. That's why I say you're a perpetual student, but you'll want it. You'll want to find more tools and you know, just to be able to speak and express.
The first thing is to love what you're doing. And when we came up, we didn't give a damn about money, man, or fame. We didn't know how to pronounce that. There was no money or fame in it. And so it had to be pure love, you know, and dedication.